In the wake of Hurricane Helene, we saw a lot of mismanagement and downright negligence from all kinds of agencies as well as private companies. However, if you take a deeper look, you'll find out that no company has caused more damage to local communities than Duke Energy. As you just saw in the video, they're being accused of letting the water out of their dams and drowning hundreds of homes without much warning. In Charlotte, North Carolina, flooded homeowners who live above and below Lake Norman are convinced Duke Energy's decisions before and during Hurricane Helene protected that lake at the expense of those upstream and downstream. One homeowner said there was a lot of water heading their way. They knew it. It feels like we're taking the brunt because these homes aren't worth as much as Lake Norman. Now, what they did might sound like your average tale of corporate greed, but the reality is that this particular energy company has a history of destroying local communities over and over again.
To this utility, one homeowner told us inaction by Duke Energy has harmed the people of Riverside and Lake Drive once before and not that long ago.
We had 6 feet of water in the house. We lost everything we had.
After floodwaters destroyed Eric Jenderson's home in 2019, the homeowner learned a valuable lesson.
We missed water incursion by about 8 inches.
That, as the waters rose even higher this time around, spared his new house.
It puts me into a really unusual position because this entire community, every single one of my neighbors, have lost everything. And I'm the only one really standing.
He's speaking up on behalf of his hurting neighbors.
It's inconceivable. I don't understand it.
Convinced Duke Energy allowed history to repeat itself.
Anybody who wants to say that this was an act of God, well, it had an active accomplice in Duke Energy as far as I'm concerned.
The homeowner was one of several dozen who sued the utility after the 2019 flood, alleging negligence, accusing Duke Energy then of failing to lower dam levels to accommodate the expected heavy rainfall, among other things. He says they eventually arrived at a settlement that was satisfactory to both parties. But back then,
I know that this kind of thing doesn't need to happen again.
Even the governor raised concerns and pledged to look into the situation. Despite all that, now in 2024, the utility's own data show Mountain Island Lake's levels stayed above its target for the entire month of September.
Why aren't the lake levels being lowered precipitously ahead of an event like this?
In response to WCNC Charlotte's questions, the utility insisted creating any additional storage in Mountain Island Lake ahead of time would not have prevented the flooding, citing the lake's small size coupled with the historic rainfall. In a statement to WCNC Charlotte, the utility said as soon as they anticipated Hurricane Helene's arrival and its significant rainfall, Duke Energy's hydro operations team began moving water through the entire 11-lake system, adding the utility must take a holistic approach because a decision at one lake can impact the others.
And if you're wondering why they might be doing something so damn evil, well, the answer is actually pretty simple. They are also one of the biggest beneficiaries of the lithium boom that's currently taking place in North Carolina. Just last year, they introduced the largest lithium-based battery system in the state by starting the commercial operation of an 11-megawatt project in Onslow County. In recent years, Duke Energy has been expanding battery storage in North Carolina. In the city of Asheville, a 9-megawatt lithium-ion battery system is operating next to a Duke Energy substation in the Shiloh community. In Madison County, in the town of Hot Springs, the company has a 4-megawatt lithium-ion battery system that is part of a microgrid in the town. Even more importantly, the company plans to continue investing in battery technology over the next few years. Duke Energy expects to have more than 1,600 megawatts of battery storage in service by 2029. Currently, the company's regulated utilities have about 90 megawatts of battery energy storage projects in operation in 3 states. So basically, this giant utility company is now invested heavily into these energy storage projects. And you're wondering why they might be looking to grab more lithium-rich land in North Carolina? And this expansion project has been so good for them that they have become the most profitable utility stock in the market. In fact, in the last 6 months alone, their stock has gone up by a staggering 22%, which is crazy for the current market. And if you're wondering who might profit from this stock surge, well, I think you already know who they are.
This might make sense to some of you, and some of you might not be even curious about this, but have you ever wondered who owns Duke Energy? Yeah, this company right here owns most of the shares to Duke Energy. Now I want you to Google who owns Duke Energy. like actually what are they and what do they do for North Carolina?
You can't even make this stuff up. No matter which tragedy you investigate, BlackRock and Vanguard are going to be there and they'll be making money from it. If you don't believe me, just look at Lahaina, Maui, and how one company completely destroyed so many lives and paved the path for the biggest land grab in recent memory.
Basically, a comedy of errors. And then let's talk about Hawaiian Electric. The power went down in the morning, but then mysteriously somehow it went back on in the afternoon, and that's when Lahaina Town, that's when transformers were literally, utility poles were falling into gas stations, and once the propane tanks started going, because every restaurant in Lahaina has propane tanks, there was explosion after explosion is what I've heard. And then the harbor diesel caught on fire, and that blew up too. So the down power lines, in my humble opinion, are the biggest thing to blame here, and the fact that the power was still on or there was residual charges in the power lines.
And who owns shares for Hawaiian Electric? You guessed it, BlackRock and Vanguard were the ones behind that company as well. Now, things don't just end here. Apparently, this pattern of flooding communities by opening dams is being used all over North Carolina to destroy homes with impunity.
The city of Asheville has known since 2004 that the dam at the North Fork Reservoir was decrepit and inadequate and a lethal danger under flood conditions. They had 20 years to fix it. When the moment of the test arrived, they told us that they had no choice but to open the floodgates and let the water sweep away lives and homes and futures in the Swannanoa River Valley. We're hungry and thirsty and filthy and in the dark amongst the wreckage of our homes and our lives. And the best the government can do is send badge-toting gun thugs from as far away as Louisiana and Texas to keep hungry people away from food and thirsty people away from water, because we are not their priority. Their priority is the protection of wealth and the defense of corporate profits. If we were a bank, they would have saved us. If we were some country that they wanted to occupy, they would have already done something. We demand full federal relief, real federal relief. We demand unemployment. We demand medical coverage. We demand our houses be fixed. It's our own money. We should be ticked off. We should demand from the federal government, what have you done with my money? We should be angry.
And while some people might call this conjecture or just another conspiracy theory, things are starting to change in Washington. More and more politicians are beginning to talk openly about just how ridiculous and blatant these land grabs are. And one man who's probably the most outspoken on this subject is Senator John Kennedy.
A new conspiracy theory. I'll concede that we need some new conspiracy theories, but it's because all the old ones turned out to be true. Conspiracy theories up something like 37-0. Here are the facts. Helene was a monster storm. We saw it coming. The federal government had time to prepare. It wasn't prepared. We don't have nearly enough soldiers and military helicopters rescuing people. During Katrina, we had 20,000 soldiers and 350 military helicopters. A week after the storm in Appalachia, we had, I think, 7,000 soldiers and maybe 100 helicopters, and you especially need helicopters in a mountainous area. Senators Budd and Tillis are so frustrated, they've asked Vice President Harris and President Biden to put an active duty military leader in charge, but so far I don't think they've heard anything. Now, in the middle of all of this, the White House,
sir.
I was just going to say, in the middle of all this, the White House sends a FEMA representative on a national talk show on Sunday to say, stop with the hard questions. It's hurting the morale of the FEMA employees. You can't, even Jussie Smollett can't make this stuff up. I mean, most Americans who saw that interview, Sean, thought, cry me a river. That's what we pay you for. Get your ass back to work. And then, in the middle of all this, the vice president, puts out this tweet that she wants to send $157 million to Lebanon. Lebanon is run by Hezbollah. We're at war with Hezbollah. If you give Lebanon money, Hezbollah will take it and use it to buy weapons to try to kill us and Israel. There's no reward for being stupid.
He's referring to the infamous interview by the head of FEMA, who said that the comfort of her employees is a priority to her.
It has a tremendous impact on the comfort level of our own employees to be able to go out there, but it's also demoralizing to all of the first responders that have been out there in their communities helping people, FEMA staff, volunteers, the private sector that are working side by side with local officials to go out and help people. I need to make sure I can get the resources to where they're needed. And when you have this dangerous rhetoric like you're hearing, it creates fear in our own employees.
I wonder what rhetoric she's talking about, because as far as anyone knows, FEMA has become the most useless agency in the rescue and recovery efforts after the hurricane. Now, since Senator Kennedy was talking about conspiracies, let's talk about another one that hasn't received as much attention as it should have. You see, the man who was holding BioLab responsible for the toxic fire is dead. Environmental Officer Kenny Johnson died after giving testimony about the toxic BioLab fire in Georgia. Kenny said that nobody listened to his warning that the BioLab facility was going to explode. Everyone in Rockdale County needs to go to the doctor to have their blood checked. Here are some parts of his final testimony.
I am the state representative for soil and water conservation. I'm the first black man to be elected to this position since 1937, since the creation of soil and water. I worked in a field like this before, and catch my breath. But this company is called a COD. What I mean is a chemical oxidant demand. They treat their own water. And the chemicals that they keep on property, sulfuric acid, MIBK, that will kill you. Everybody in Rockdale County need to go to the doctor and check out their blood for toxins. Please get that out. They used to send me out every time, at least every other month. But they pour water on the chemical that reacts. How are we going to solve this? We need a federal criminal investigation. EPA Region 4 is the worst region in the United States. Look it up. Yes. Rockdale County been out of federal compliance for 4 decades. I've been fighting for 6 years. They put a guy on the ballot illegally. He wasn't an incoming. So I'm pulling out warrants now. Yeah, the government's scared. I've been fighting and been saying that that company was going to explode. No one listened. We got to remove this company out of this community.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
According to the Georgia House Democratic Caucus, shortly after his testimony, Johnson complained of shortness of breath and subsequently collapsed in the hallway outside the hearing. Now, the company has faced ongoing scrutiny regarding its problematic safety record, most recently following a fire at its Conyers, Georgia plant, which put 90,000 citizens of the region under shelter-in-place restrictions. And Kenny was an instrumental witness in explaining how the top executives at the company were directly responsible for this environmental disaster. But now he's gone, and just like millions of Americans, I do not think that this was a coincidence. Let's not forget that we sadly live in a country where whistleblowers die every day. So I would not be surprised at all if a multi-million-dollar chemical company decided to silence its biggest critic. However, we can't say anything with certainty until we find out exactly what happened to Mr. Johnson. All I'm gonna say is that men like him are becoming rare these days, so we have to protect them at all costs. In other concerning news, nanotechnology has been found in blood due to the COVID vaccine. There are blinking blinking lights in people's blood. There are also self-assembled microchips emitting MAC addresses. The flashing blue lights are nano and micro robots that are communicating with each other. The analysis of Pfizer injections found 54 undeclared chemical elements, including fluorescent graphene oxide. Dr. Anna Mahelsia used a 4,000-time microscope to analyze the blood of both vaccinated and unvaccinated individuals, and here's what she could not believe.
What you see here is a Pfizer BioNTech COVID-19 injection when it was first put on a slide. And in the background, you see all of these blinking lights and extreme activity. This is 100 times magnification. And here you see that something is self-assembled that we call microchips, because we have done studies that these microchips are actually emitting what's called a MAC address phenomenon.
Tell us what the flashing dots are in the background.
This is what's called nano and micro robots. They are communicating with each other via light signal, and they are collaborating to self-assemble these larger structures that are microchips. And so this is in the realm of self-assembling nanotechnology. Here you see a micro robot emitting blue light. Here's another one. This background swarming is what I've seen in the human blood, and I will show you later images of that. They did analysis of COVID-19 injection and found 54 undeclared chemical elements, including fluorescent graphene oxide. And I have documented the fluorescence phenomena in the blood and with this technology extensively. I've looked at many childhood vaccinations now under the microscope, and they have the same self-assembling nanotechnology. Richard Hirschman sent me embalmed blood of a vaccinated individual who had been deceased for 8 months before. I got these vials in June of 2023, and you can see here the same filaments. And this is a video of ongoing self-assembly within this embalmed blood. And what you see here are these micelles, and they're filled with the same blinking lights that I showed you earlier in the COVID shots.
If this turns out to be accurate, then we might just be walking data collection centers for people behind the curtain. And considering the fact that roughly 367 million Pfizer-BioNTech COVID-19 vaccine doses have been administered in the United States, I don't even want to imagine the power these shady corporations now have over us. So even though I know that this new information might be true, I'm hoping it's not. That brings an end to today's video. Please make sure you're subscribed to this channel, and I look forward to seeing you on the next video.